Birds and Bees Don't Fuck is produced by Champagne Womb LLC for your entertainment and education. It contains material that may not be suitable for those under the age of 18. Audience discretion is advised. The opinions, thoughts, and ideas expressed by guests on the show are solely their own. Now, without further ado, please enjoy the show. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but sex education of the past failed us. Because birds and bees, they don't fuck. Welcome to Birds and Bees Don't Fuck, a podcast where we learn exactly how bad our formative sex education, or lack thereof, really was. I'm your host, Arielle Zadok. I'm a producer, intimacy coordinator, and sexologist. My guest today is a sexologist, intimacy coordinator, and creator of the Cowgirl Workout. Welcome to the show, Tyomi Morgan!
Yay! Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. We met and we were like, oh my God.
Yes, it was like kismet.
It
was.
was.
Straight away, like zing.
Oh my God, at Vibe Festival or Vibe Expo. And it was like, what a magical expo. And like, you don't get to say that about work stuff often, but we do.
True. I mean, it was amazing. Like at first I was like, this is smaller than what I'm used to because I coordinate the seminars for Exotica. And we do 4 shows a year. And it's a huge show that like attracts like 20,000 people over the course of a 3-day weekend. And so I was like, this is much smaller than what I anticipated. But even though it was small, it packed such a punch as far as like the value that I got out of that, and just like all these amazing connections. And the difference between the shows is like at Exotica, I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off.
Mm-hmm.
Vibe, I actually have the time to sit and talk to people. And I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Right?
So yeah, it was definitely a vibe, pun intended.
I know I keep saying that and I'm like, oh shit, but I like it. But yeah, it was, it's not often that you go to an expo or something in like any sort of like convention or professional thing where like you can actually settle in and you can actually connect with people and you can actually like get into real authentic conversations, because so much of networking is bullshit.
It is.
And like, we're not having that. And I think it's also different because in the sexuality space, I think we're already at the point of like, we're so authentic already because we got nothing to hide. Like,
exactly.
We are, so many of us are teaching sexuality by also sharing some of our own experiences. And just the fact that we are talking about sex in and of itself is already like, the vulnerability is like out the window. Like, who cares? We're all here for it. So I think that also lends itself to some immediate connections because we're like, oh yeah, we're already with our people.
Exactly, because we already know what like each person has been through. And then like learning that you are an intimacy coordinator, I was like,
I know. When you said that, I was like, what? All this time I didn't even know that, because I've been following you for so long because of the Cowgirl Workout, which is fucking awesome. I love it. Love it. And we'll definitely talk about that more. But when you said that you were an intimacy coordinator too, I was like, you better shut the fuck up right now.
Listen, this work is like, it marries all the things that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Film, choreography, intimacy, sex education, advocacy, like into one job, right?
Yeah.
And people don't even know that it's a job that exists. Like, people are just starting to get to know about it, but not just like the general public. We're talking about like
in the industry. Oh my God. Yeah. When I'm on set, people have so many questions. So, which by the time this comes out, I'm going to already be doing regular workshops. So like, if you're crew, hit me up, because I'm doing regular workshops to teach you what the fuck an intimacy coordinator is. And they're free. It's just because like,
that's a great idea.
Gotta do the due diligence. You know what I mean?
I've been thinking about that. I'm like, I think if more intimacy coordinators would just host events to educate crew members and directors and producers, and they would understand like the actual benefit of having us as a part of their productions. I mean, let's not even, like, the overarching thing is like protection.
Sure.
And not just protection for the actors, but for the production in general, from lawsuits or insurance claims, or like all the things that can come out of if harm is actually caused on set. And
Absolutely.
then when the public gets a hold of these things, right, especially if someone like places a lawsuit
Yeah.
on the production company, then we already know, like, in the court of public opinion, people
Mm-hmm.
get canceled instantly,
Yeah.
and it can impact the bottom line. So, you know, in my mind, I'm like, this is a very simple thing.
It
It
is very
doesn't make
simple.
sense why people are giving some pushback.
It's because they don't understand it. But
Right.
also to your point, that's what I go to also because I have my background in producing and ADing. So I'm like,
Hmm.
great. If you don't want to talk about any part of the actor's safety or the authenticity of the scene or any of the logistics or whatever, fine. Let's get all of the consent and boundary stuff out of the way. Let's just take that off the table for a second. What we're talking about is efficiency of your shoot day,
Yes.
liability for insurance, liability for sexual harassment and employee relations, cases that have to be investigated. Let's just talk about that stuff for a second. Because if you take
Exactly.
everything else that people are like, sex police and consent is boring and blah, blah, like whatever, right? Take all of that off the table. Let's just look at it from a producer brain for a second here.
Exactly.
Why would you not want one person to handle
All of that.
all of that? The
Hmm.
contracts, the modesty garments, the barriers, the choreography, which we're not always doing
We're
choreography.
we're barely doing
We're barely
choreography.
that. Like
We're
people
just
think it's that, and it's like,
it's
no, that's the
not
smallest part of our job. And that's like if
if
if if somebody wants that help.
right,
And
because
oftentimes it's just like,
directors
hey,
typically don't want that help. They already have the vision for what they want. So it's like,
yeah,
all right, well, let us handle all of the other heavy lifting that you
exactly.
don't have the time to do. The
Yeah.
things that are going to help this scene come out the way that you want it to come out, while also maintaining the boundaries of the actors and making
Mm-hmm.
sure that all of your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, so that way there's no liabilities.
Yeah.
And the crew, making sure that our crew
Yes.
feels safe in shooting this stuff as well, because
Mm-hmm.
they're aware and they've prepared themselves before taping.
And also, they can advocate for themselves if it's a scene that they don't
Yes.
feel comfortable being a part of. They have
Hmm.
autonomy too. If
Yes, they
you are
do.
a crew member, you do not have to shoot everything. You can talk to your department head about not being comfortable shooting a sexual assault scene or just shooting anything about sex. Like you are allowed to have your boundaries too. And I think so often people are like it's so far out of the realm of thought that
Hmm.
we have camera people, we have costumers, we have makeup artists, we have hairstylists, we have assistant directors, we have people who have script supervisor, we have people who have to be looking at the screen and they
Exactly.
have to be in the room. We try to reduce how many people those are, but there are people that have to be there. And to show up and not know that you're going to see a sexual assault scene or that you're going to
Hmm.
see some balls.
Exactly.
Nobody wants
That's
to be surprised with balls in life or at work, okay?
or buttocks
You know?
or breasts or anything like.
Nothing.
And it's robbing people of their autonomy to be able to
100%.
choose, and
Mhm.
that's what creates an unsafe work environment, when
Yeah.
you just force these things onto people,
Mhm.
especially when, like, the pressure of
Making your
time,
day. Yeah,
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 is
getting it
put on it.
done.
Yep.
Mhm.
So, you know we do a very important job,
We
and
do.
we need the support
Yes.
of, like, not just industry, but, like, the public should also start to
Mhm.
learn about why our jobs are important, so they can advocate for it too, like for their favorite
Absolutely.
stars. And, educating the actors too
Yeah.
around the fact that, like, we kind of serve as insurance for them.
Mhm.
And for the actors to also advocate for intimacy coordinators is important,
Yeah.
because if you're raising your voice and you're saying, I need to have this in order to do my job,
Mhm.
well, then, hey, this is an above the line person. Like, you're gonna have to adhere to what they're saying
Yeah.
in order to get to have your production even go on.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how this field is going to evolve over the
Yeah.
next, like, 10 years.
Same, because I think where we're going to be at in 10 years is going to look so different from where we're at right now, which right now is like
Hmm.
kind of begging to be on set, like
Yeah.
trying to justify our existence. But like you would never do that with stunts. You would never have an actor drive a car into
Nope.
a wall, for example. So why would you have an actor drive a penis into someone's, back, for example,
Right.
like to give an example, like it's just when you start to break it down and then when people can start to understand what the role is, then they're like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does. We know that.
We know that because we're working in this space and we
Mhm.
understand like what our roles are and being able to help each department head know what role they play
Yeah.
and how they are to play those roles is really important too, because then you just have people like feeling frustrated in their jobs,
Yeah.
especially when they feel like their job is tacking on, or that you're tacking on things onto their job that is not really a part of their description.
Which is
Like,
exactly what used to happen. If
yep.
anybody cared enough, like as an AD, I came up with protocols, and anytime there was nudity, kissing, anything on any of my sets, like I had a protocol that I would follow. And,
Mm-hmm.
but that's me. I was one lowly AD, like this was well before anything was happening. And then you have costumers as well. Like a lot of this fell on the costumers because they were the people who were
Yep.
dealing with the modesty garments, who oftentimes would be like not prepared for these conversations. They weren't talking to them about consent. They were pretty much just helping them put garments on and get them dressed and everything like that.
Right.
But they would be the only person that a cast member could go to or felt like they could go to when they felt like something was wrong. But then they're not equipped to handle those conversations. They're
At
not
all.
equipped to
They're
handle
not
trauma.
trained
They're
for
not,
that.
they're not trained for that. So I'm so excited that it is something that we're talking about so often, and that SAG has finally recognized it in a contract, saying that productions have to make best efforts, because
Yes.
it doesn't mean, it's not like a hard requirement, but like if you don't have an IC on your set, there will be ramifications. And you may never be able to do a SAG job again if you can't prove that you tried to get one of us and you couldn't. And by the way, there are plenty of us out there. Like,
There are so many of us
you
that
can
are
hire
like,
us.
hire us.
Hire
We're
us.
here for work.
Atlanta, LA, New York, we got you. And if you
Same.
don't, if you're in a different city and you need someone, contact either one of us, because we will find that person for you, because
We
that's
are
how
tapped
we
into the
roll.
network.
Exactly. So love that. Love that we are in that network together. It's like, it's such a, I don't know. It takes a certain kind of person to want to do this work, because it's very hard and it's challenging. And again, you're in a position where people oftentimes don't want you. I've been very fortunate that the jobs that I've worked, people have been like, oh my God, I'm so happy that you're here. And this was so great. And I was so nervous, and you made it so much fun. And like, I didn't even know. And, like we get our shots in like 3 takes, we're done, we're out. Let's, move on. Great. But that is not the overarching experience.
It's
So
not.
yeah.
It's not. And I'm fortunate that the jobs that I've worked on, people have been very grateful for me to be there. And so now it's like, for my next trick, the goal is to move into a space where I've been hearing just
Some things.
some crazy things coming out of this production house. And I'm like, oh, but there's so much intimacy and nudity that takes part in a lot of these productions. And it's like, okay. And that's the thing too, right? One of the reasons why this work is kind of difficult sometimes is the power dynamics on set, because the IC actually has a pretty good amount of power.
Yeah.
Considering we are in charge of managing department heads and letting them know like what roles they play within these scenes, right? And then there's a director.
Yeah.
And depending on how big of an ego the director has, that's going to either make your job easier or harder. If the director is not one to want to talk about their process, which that can happen.
It does happen.
Then it's going to be a matter of reading the script, getting an idea for what's going to be happening, asking the actors themselves if they've had conversations with the director. If they haven't, then it's almost like, okay, you have to prepare for whatever is going to occur here. But mostly just, the actors are going to act, but just making sure that you're there as the insurance, right? And so there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I'm a sex educator. Like, can I just like be an intimacy coordinator? And I'm
No.
like,
No,
no,
you cannot.
you cannot.
You have to be a PA. You have
Yeah.
to work on set first for the love of all things holy.
Listen, I'm like, if you don't have a working knowledge of how sets work and you are just a sex educator and you think that it's about choreography, you're going to go on set and you're going to cause harm.
Yep.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
And you're going to get blackballed.
And it hurts all of us.
It hurts
as an
everybody.
industry, it hurts all of us.
Yeah, like people are not, word travels fast. This industry is small. And if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know the hierarchy on a set and who works where and how things work, then that's the situation where people do come in as a consent police.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they're heavy on consent because they don't really know the role of an IC.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah, we're not the sex police. We're not the consent police. It's nothing like that. No. And, there is a way to be disruptive without being disruptive. Like there's a way to do that. But if you haven't spent time on set, how are you possibly going to know that? Like it is a learned skill. So, when I was, I never say the company that I worked for, but y'all can figure it out because LinkedIn is there. But anyway, when I was building the health and safety team, in the beginning, we were hiring medical people and production people thinking that we'd pair them up very, very quickly. We weren't hiring those folks, but like as soon as the reins were given to us, it's like, okay, you're all the leadership now. Leadership, do your thing. Once we could do that, we stopped hiring medical people because it wasn't important that you knew how viruses work or how to test people or anything like that. Completely insignificant. What was important was that you understood how a film set worked so that when the shit went down, which it would, we were in a pandemic.
Right.
You knew how to handle that in a responsible way. You knew how to talk to people in a way that would move things forward, that would not escalate situations. You could have these difficult conversations with the people in the highest positions of power. And it's the same thing with intimacy coordinators. Like we can teach you everything else. You can learn everything else you need to know when it comes to the sexuality side of things and learning about sexual harassment and learning about choreography and learning about sexuality and genders and all these things. But if you don't know how to navigate a film set, I can't teach you that. I can teach you to a degree, but you have to be there to witness and you have to learn what everyone's job is by observing. That's why everybody in our industry starts as a PA. So it is a challenge because we are trying to get a lot of intimacy coordinators in there. We're trying to get qualified people. But a big part of that, when people come to me and they're like, oh my God, I really want to be an IC. I'm like, great, get on set.
Right.
Do that first. Your first step in this journey is to get on set, be a PA, get whatever jobs you can to learn set. And while you're doing that, you can also start taking the programs. You can also start doing your learning. But part of that learning is that you have to be on set. You have to be able to observe.
Yep. Being observant is like a big part of this job because like when you're back at the video village and you're looking, at the coverage of the scene, being able to see like how things are being shot, making sure that the frame up is within the boundaries of the actors and
the nudity writer.
Yeah. And
that's a big thing.
Y'all,
we're watching for that stuff. The director, the amount of times that I have asked a director if they saw a specific movement that is key to the intimacy, and they've been like, oh no, I was watching something else. And I'm like, okay, well, this is what happened and this is how we can make it better. Because they're not looking at things the same way that we are because they have the entire scene to look at. They have everything on that screen to look at. They have the words, they have they have every part of it. We're just looking at one thing.
Exactly. And that's important too, the nudity writer and intimacy writers.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if this place we've been talking about, if they actually do that. Because I'm like,
they have to, because that's been in place for decades, but is it accurate? I don't know. Are they keeping true to it? I don't know.
It's kind of scary to think about. I'm just like,
yeah.
That's why I'm like, let me call.
Let me just dig.
Let me call and dig a little bit and just see like what's going on over there before I just be like, throw me in there.
Yeah.
But when people that I know, not just like actors, but camera folks,
Mm-hmm.
wardrobe folks are like, we need you.
Yes.
Over there.
Yeah. Red
That's
flag.
saying a lot.
Yeah. For other crew members to be like, please come here.
Right.
That's like, Jesus, what's going on over there?
Right. Like
Yeah.
camera is saying, we need you and more of people like you. It's like, all right.
And the thing is, when camera says that, it happens.
I'm saying.
Let me tell you, the camera department, they get everything they want for the most part. Like, we are moving, even as a producer, like, I am moving money around to give them what they want. I am figuring out their rates where, like, other people, like, you have more flexibility. But, like, camera, they are the squeaky wheels of production, and they get everything they want.
Camera is the whole reason why the visual even exists. Like, you don't have a visual without camera.
Without camera.
And then the
but
next
like, don't
sound.
let it get to your heads, okay? Like, let's not do that. So yeah, but when you have other departments that are like, oh my God, please help, that says a lot, because again, so many of them don't even know or understand what we do. But if they're seeing things that are wrong, and I also think that our industry is like, people are more switched on, and it also helps that we have a younger generation that are now in their 20s that are working on sets. So they are coming in with their influences, and that's a really good thing, because the old way, which was very problematic and still is shifting out. And we're in that middle generation of it all, right? Like, we're in the middle, that we came in and we're like, this shit is fucked up. What do we do? And so, like, we have done what we could as we have raised our power. Like, you know, when I was a PA and I was, you know, under these ADs that had like God complexes, I'm like, oh no. Like, I've literally had an AD said, I'm God on this set. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Of course it was a man.
Of course.
And this was in New York, like, too.
We know you run the set, but you need to relax.
Yeah, you need to, like, chill out with that right now. This is not, and, you know, just like these people, like, the old way of doing things was to terrorize people and on so many sets. And so we all came up and were like, okay, we're not doing that. Like, this is not what it is. And so now we have the generation under us that is even more aware of these things because of social media, because our generation has been talking about it and has been asking for change. And we have been making those changes, again, like, as we have raised our stations. And when we are in a position of power, we can do things different.
Exactly.
So, you know, that's privilege. That's power privilege. When you get yourself in a position of power, you now have the responsibility to do shit differently.
Yep. And so that's what I'm about. Like, I literally uprooted my life from Chicago, where I'm from, to branch out and to, like, go down to Atlanta, because I'm like, there's a lot of work down here.
Yeah.
And a lot of work where I could show up in a very powerful way.
I love it. So, okay. So now let's get to the sex education stuff, which always takes me like halfway through an episode now at this point, because I'm just so excited about my guests, which is great. I love all you people. Keep coming on. So you grew up in Chicago. Do you remember anything about your sex education?
Oh, yes, a lot. So in 5th grade, we all were separated by sex, so like male, female, and we were taken to this facility called the Robert Crown Center. And I think it still exists in Illinois. But the Robert Crown Center is a reproductive center. And that's their whole MO, is just teaching people about reproduction.
Wow.
So we were separated by sex, and the girls went on one side, the guys went on another side. And we were educated about our reproductive organs, our menstrual cycle, how babies are truly made, STIs. Like, it went through the full gambit. And then there's a museum in there with like models and stuff like that. And this was a field trip. It was like an all-day thing.
Wow.
So our parents had to sign off on it. So that was our first, like, introduction to sex education, and that was a mandatory thing for every 5th grader at that school.
Wow. I am so supremely impressed right now.
That was my introduction.
That's the most comprehensive story I have had to date on this podcast.
And then in 7th grade, we had another, like, level of sex ed, which was a teacher that would come and, like, we would have one period during, I think it was either first or second semester, but this would be our class. But what really pissed me off was that we had this amazing teacher. She was like this like hippy dippy, like white lady, curly hair, very nice, sweet disposition and spirit. And she was really good at what she was teaching us. Like she presented sex education in a way that didn't feel gross, it didn't feel slimy, but it also didn't feel so like heavily medicinal. Like
Yeah.
she
Like
made it very
science.
right. She made it very relatable. And all the activities that she would have us do and like games and stuff. And I just remember this one class, she was teaching us about masturbation.
Wow.
She was teaching us about pleasure, right? But then after that, they fired her.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
They fired her because they said, oh, you can't teach them that. And it pissed me off so bad because I was like, so we're only supposed to learn about reproduction and
Yeah.
STIs. We're not supposed to be learning about how this can make us feel good.
Yeah.
And that was kind of traumatic. And that was the first time I had experienced like punishment for um for expressing pleasure. Like
Yeah.
this woman was trying to teach us how to enjoy sex and that was punished. And that's literally what we see in like general society,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you are a sex educator and you profess this and you go out into the world and you wave your sex educator flag, you're getting flack from all these trolls online
Mm-hmm.
and people who are traumatized and triggered by your just mere existence. And then they bully you
Yeah.
into trying to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
But why? When you actually do want to see this content, you just feel triggered.
You're afraid of it. You're triggered by
Mm-hmm.
it. It's, and so often it's, how dare you do this thing that I'm terrified of doing
That's
myself,
exactly what it is.
you know?
That is the undercurrent of the
Mm-hmm.
bullying.
Yeah.
And then we get a slap on the wrist through censorship
Oh, yeah,
on
because I
all
was
these
going to say that's
platforms.
even if your content gets to the point of actually
Mhm.
being seen, which is like a challenge in and of itself,
Mhm.
then you get the comments and you get the stuff. And so like the way that sex educators have to navigate all this stuff is like, it's ridiculous. I mean, I just started a mailing list because I'm like, I got to get off of social media. Like, I have
Yeah,
to
the
be able
mailing
to talk to
lists.
people directly and say the
Yeah.
things that need to be said, and not have to worry about censoring the word penis with the number 3 or clitoris with like a exclamation point. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
We have to
Like,
spell these things differently because
yeah.
they've programmed the bots to
Hmm.
scan and pick up on these words and
Yeah.
terms. It's frustrating. It really is. And like being someone who came in 12 years ago,
Hmm.
everything was different. The atmosphere of social media was different.
Yeah.
And so we had a little more freedom to be able to do these things, to be able to promote and like talk about sex. But now it feels like an uphill battle sometimes where you
Yeah.
have to like roll the information up in a different packaging
Hmm.
to deliver it so that way it's not seen as offensive.
Yeah. When it's just education. It's
It's just
not like there's
education.
nothing offensive about the word vulva.
No, it's not.
And yet,
And yet we
and
get a
yet.
slap on the wrist for it.
Hmm.
So it was very apparent to me in 7th grade that this was something that is not generally embraced or accepted when it comes to pleasure.
Yeah.
When it comes to procreation and prevention of, the transmission of infections, then yeah, we can talk about it. But as soon as you talk about foreplay and pleasure and like
We out.
ways, it's like,
Mm-mm.
nope,
No,
we
no.
can't do
No, no,
that.
no,
We
no,
can't be
no.
teaching our
That is
young
offensive.
kids how to empower themselves, which is
Yeah.
interesting because it's like culturally, just across the spectrum, young boys are encouraged to masturbate, but young girls are not. And then
Mm-mm.
girls are taught that their bodies are really just to be used by men.
Yeah.
And we're speaking hetero, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Um, but this is the language and this is like just the programming that's here generally. It's like,
Yeah.
well, sex happens to you.
Exactly.
Sex doesn't happen because it's something that you want to do. It just
Exactly.
happens to you. And
And you are the gatekeeper of it. It's up to you to push him
exactly.
away or let him come. And if you let him come, by the way, you're a whore. And if you push him away, you're a prude. So there is
There's
no
no middle
winning.
ground.
There's no middle
There's
ground
no middle
here.
ground.
You
So,
just fucked. But if you get fucked, you a problem.
right.
Like, what the fuck? I mean, everything in the Barbie speech in America
Mm-hmm.
Ferrero's, I think that's her last name. I'm so bad at names, guys. Um, the Barbie speech, it's like you can do this and you have to do this and you have to be this and you have to be this, and that's what the messaging when you're socialized as a girl around
Mm-hmm.
sexuality is. So how did you first of all, I'm curious, since you were like onto that lesson when you were that young in seventh grade, which, like, at that point we are all starting to do things and experiment with our bodies or other people's bodies
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. How did that impact you at the time? Or do you feel like it did?
So I would say the one thing that impacted me the most was the fact that I was like a devout Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So my household was not like anti-sex. My mom was really anti-teen pregnancy.
Okay, fair.
um but she was like, if this is something that you want to do, talk to me about it so that we can get on birth control.
Yeah.
Right? So that we can get the condoms and all that kind of thing.
Good for you,
But
mom.
but she also empowered me and my sister around our bodies.
Yeah.
Like, there's this amazing book. It's still on the market. It's called The Care and Keeping of You. They have a
Oh,
1 and a 2. It's by American Girl.
okay.
And that book literally details everything that happens to your body as a young woman when you go through puberty.
Really?
And we got in trouble for bringing this book to
Of course you
school.
did.
But my mom pushed back on that and was just like, so you mean to tell me like I can't empower my girls around their bodies? She's like, they're not passing around this book to be malicious, I'm sure. But there's other people
Yeah.
who are probably curious, right? So our principal changed her mind, was just like, just don't have it out during school hours. And it's like, whatever.
Whatever.
So
Good for your mom.
yeah, she definitely pushed back on that. But what I will say is that it made me say, you know what, I got to find this stuff out on my own,
Mm-hmm.
because I knew that the institutions that my parents had trusted to educate us were not going to do it. And even when we went to high school, we had sex ed junior year. And why is it always the PE teacher? Like,
I know,
why is
right?
the
Like,
PE
and which
teacher
is like usually some creepy old dude.
creepy old white dude
Yes.
typically? And it's like, why is this dude teaching me about sex ed? And it's always just like abstinence
Yep.
education,
Fear-based.
fear-based,
Mm-hmm.
the risk factors of
Mm.
STI transmission and blah, 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 blah.
And also they're real miserable to be there too.
As hell, they don't want to do it.
They
And
do, they feel
it's always
so
like,
uncomfortable.
okay, open up your books, class. It's like, but I just saw
Ugh.
you at fourth period. Like, I don't want to see you again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see you again. So it literally led me into just exploring myself, and reading the books and watching the documentaries on the Discovery Channel. And at
Mm-hmm.
this point, I was already writing erotica too.
You were?
So
Oh my God,
yeah, I
I love
was
that.
reading and writing erotica. So on the pleasure side of things, it was like erotica kind of gave me like the way into that.
Yeah.
Um, but I was heavily fascinated about the body and the body's reactions and like the mechanics of it all. So I was like studying that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what helped me out. And I would also ask my parents before watching these documentaries or whatever. I'm like, it's not porn.
Yeah.
It's a documentary on human sexuality. Can I watch it? They're like, sure.
Oh my God, I
And
love
then,
that. That's like, I just want to pause here for a second because what I'm hearing is that there was such open communication between you and your parents that allowed
mm-hmm,
you to explore, that allowed you to learn in a safe way, that you
yes,
were not forced to go to porn. You were not forced to go
no,
to other people, to go to friends that had bad information because they were also just children. So,
mm-hmm,
like, the importance of communication in the parent-child relationship, and the importance of communication with oneself, and the importance of communication between partners, and again going back to what we do on film too, like the importance of
mm-hmm,
communication, like communication.
is key.
It's key.
And like, I'm so happy that I have a father that's a feminist, and a
Yeah.
mother who gets it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so um I wasn't exploring with other people, and I was barely exploring with myself when I was a
Mhm.
teenager, because again, the religious
Yeah.
complex, right? But what I had sense enough to know was that I had an attraction to eroticism and like and just sex. And so I didn't allow what I was being told in church to diminish that for me.
Mm.
But I also knew, like, okay, once I leave my parents' house, I will be able to explore some things myself, right?
Yeah.
Um, so moving to New York out of high school and like going to school
Wow.
in New York, it was like huge culture shock
Yeah.
in so many different ways. But like the main thing was like that's when I started having like partnered
Mhm.
experiences. And I don't even know when I started really watching porn because I don't really consume porn heavily.
Yeah.
Like I use my imagination a lot.
Mhm.
I only watch porn when I want to see like what my friends are doing out there for the
Yeah.
most part, or like when I'm studying it for like my own like content creation or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But I don't really consume it for my own pleasure. I don't need
Mm.
it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just
I feel
I
that.
just don't. And if I
Mhm.
do feel like I do, then I have like my categories that I'll go to.
Yeah.
But going like moving to New York was when everything just opened up.
Mm.
And I learned very easy. Like well, I learned very early on that it's easy to fall into sexual encounters like and I think this is why men have an issue with women who are sexually liberated
Mm.
because it's very easy for us to fall into sexual situations.
Yeah.
And when I say fall into, I mean like dick is just being offered.
Yeah.
Dick is being offered all the time.
Yeah.
And I learned that
For better or
literally,
worse.
right, for better or for worse.
Usually for worse.
I literally learned this like in New York after I had like my first experience. It was like doom, doom, doom. I said, damn, wait,
Yeah.
5 bodies already.
See, I grew up in New York, and so I grew up at a very early age being sexualized and all
Mm,
that, like,
oh, the
yeah.
catcalling in New York is
Oh my
ridiculous.
god. Yeah.
And then too, like I'm very proud of like how my mom raised me as far as because my dad raised me in my formative years and then my
Mhm.
mom took over when puberty happened.
Mhm.
But my mom, like, she cloaked us because we had like very developed bodies very
Mhm.
early on. And I hated it at the time. But it allowed me to have a childhood. It
Yeah.
allowed me to still like hold on to that childhood innocence for as long as I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I wasn't thrust into these spaces where like I was being overly sexualized by men.
Mhm.
Granted, being out on the street and stuff like that,
It's gonna
it would
happen.
get caught catcalled. Like
Yeah.
people would think like at 13, people thought I was like 18.
Yeah.
Like, but I wasn't. I was still a
A
child. Like,
child.
still had like a baby face.
And also, like, 18 is still a child.
Right. I mean,
Legal, but still a child.
right. Exactly. So I was just like, okay, um, that did so much for me in being able to choose like when I wanted to approach sexual exploration and how I wanted to explore it. I didn't feel like I had to be thrust because there were girls like that I was growing up with that were already in situations with men where they were like so much older than them.
Oh, yeah.
And it was definitely statutory rape.
Oh, I had my first penetrative sexual experience with someone who was 21 when I was 16.
I'm talking about these girls were in 7th grade dating like 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like they were like
Yeah.
11 and 12
We saw that too. Like
getting
junior high to high school.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
It's like, no,
these
no, no,
guys
no,
with
no.
cars like picking them up
Yeah.
after school,
Mhm.
taking them shopping, doing I'm like wait, what? And of course pregnancy, like we had a
Yeah.
few folks in the 7th grade
It
who
would
got
just, like,
pregnant and had babies,
disappear,
yeah, and
come
they would come
back, and you're
back,
like, "Where'd they go?"
but like
And
they
then
would
they're in the
throw
special
baby
ed class
showers.
too, by the way, so then they're also being held back because now they're being treated differently, and
See, in
it's a
my
whole other
school,
thing.
they didn't do that. They
Mm.
didn't put them in the special ed class when they had a baby. They just had like it was so strange. It was like a maternity leave in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
They would be pregnant and be in school and be pregnant and then
Mhm.
disappear when they would have the baby and then come back
Yeah.
to the same class so they didn't have to be separated from everybody
Oh,
else.
that's great.
But it was to the point though where like people were throwing baby showers. People were throwing baby showers in 7th and 8th grade. And I was just like, this is wild. Like,
It's wild.
does no one else see how wild this is?
Mhm.
But, so I got to witness that. And I was like, I don't want that for
Mhm.
myself. So
Yeah.
I got to make a choice. And I'm happy. Some people say that like arriving at sexual activity with partners at like 19 is a late bloomer, but I don't see it that way.
No.
And I also don't subscribe to that kind of talk. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I arrived at this late. No, you arrive in divine time when you choose to show up. That's
Yes.
it. There
Yeah.
is literally no time frame for when you're supposed to have sex with other people.
Yeah.
And then the concept of virginity also pisses me off
Oh, 'cause it's not
because
real.
I'm like, so You don't consider yourself a virgin if you've played with yourself. You
Yeah.
don't consider yourself a
Yeah.
virgin if you've had an erotic dream and then you have a wet dream, like you have an orgasm in
Mhm.
your sleep.
Yeah.
It's like there's this invalidation of the different ways we can interact in sexual exploration or even
Mhm.
eroticism, where it's like if it's not vaginal penetration, it
Yeah.
doesn't count, and it's like what?
Which completely, besides the fact that there's just so much bullshit there, and like it's not even scientifically proven, like there's like virginity literally
It's
does
a
not
concept.
exist. It doesn't exist. But besides all of that, when we are saying that sex is penis and vagina, we are erasing every single person who does not have sex with a penis and a vagina.
Exactly.
We are in a vagina, or any vulva play, or any intersex people, any trans people. Like, we're erasing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or people with disabilities, like, what,
Right.
they don't have sex because they're paralyzed? No,
No.
that's literally not how it happens. So,
No.
we really, and this comes up on this show so often, because virginity isn't real.
It
So
is
we
a
talk about it.
concept. That shit is
Yeah.
trash, and I just wish we can obliterate it all together. And
Mhm.
it's not a requirement, you guys. It's
Mm-mm.
not a requirement to actually have sex.
No, ever, ever,
Like,
ever.
let's say you have the desire for it, but you just never want to connect with people in that way.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
You
You
don't
can
have
just do
to.
it with yourself
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of your life. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But I will say, in the court of public opinion,
Mm.
there's this idea that something is wrong with you if you don't have sexual desires, if you're
Yeah.
not engaging sexually.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people when we're having these conversations, I'm like, just because it exists doesn't mean it's for you.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you have to be a part of it. You can be a part of sexual conversations and not be having
Yeah.
sex. And and often what I've seen on Twitter when I do have like these public conversations about sex, there's always like one or two people, typically these men, who are virgins. Like
Mm-hmm.
they've never had sexual intercourse with another person.
Mm-hmm.
But along with like their comments is like this self-loathing
Oh, yeah.
talk.
It's shame.
And I'm like, if you want to remain a virgin, or if if that's just where you're at, then embrace that.
That's great. That's
You don't
beautiful.
you don't have to beat yourself up for not having this
Yeah.
experience. But if it's something you want to do, then seek some help so that you can enter into
Yeah.
this in a way that's safe and consensual and that meets your needs for
Mm-hmm.
pleasure. Like,
Yeah.
get the education instead of being like, oh, well, nobody ever is gonna want to have sex with me. Like,
Yeah. And also, like,
it's so
if you are
sad.
trying to date and you can't find anybody in the world who's interested in you, that's an opportunity for you to look at yourself and figure
Yep.
out what's going on here. What am I putting out there? What do I need to learn? What do I need to shift about myself? And I'm not saying that you need to change yourself in order to be in a relationship with somebody, but if the same patterns are happening,
You're the common denominator.
exactly, you're the
There's
common
something going on
denominator.
because
We all got to do the work.
we create our experience,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever is imprinted on our subconscious mind is what becomes our reality.
Yeah.
So if there's a script running in one's mind that's telling them that they're unworthy and that no one's ever going to like them, then that's what they're going to attract, people who don't see them as worthy and people who don't like them. And then they try to go this way because they have an attraction to this person for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. And then they're met with that resistance. But it's like, but it came from you first.
Yeah.
So, but people are not even ready to have that conversation.
No.
It's like, I just want to blame the whole world. I don't want to take any
That
accountability
part.
for what I'm creating.
And I think that there's also, it's worth noting that people are also shifting who they are. What are you doing, Rosie? These little creatures under here. Rosie's got an attitude. I got this cat, this sweet little pussy.
She's very sweet.
She is. She was on the hard streets of Hollywood. And I was like, fine, come into my house, see what's up. Rosie could use a friend. Rosie's such a bitch.
Because she was chilling. She was just stretching, trying to get your attention. And then here comes Rosie.
I know. Rosie's like, this is my mom.
Right.
And now you're all up in my house. I know I always want to play with cats out of the house, but now you're in my house. What's happening? Anyway, I digress. The point is that we often see people who are shifting their identity in order to
Yes.
be in relationship with someone who they're chasing.
Yep.
And that's never going to work out because you're not being your authentic self. You have then created this persona for this person to fall in love with or like or whatever. And eventually you're not going to be able to keep up that persona
at all
because it's not who you are. So great, you might get this person, you might reel them in, but why do you want that person who doesn't want you for the exact person that you are? But again, that's not to say that if there are some challenges that you're having that you shouldn't be looking at yourself and saying like, well, how am I showing up? How do I speak to myself? How do I speak to others?
Exactly.
Like there's always work to be done, but if you're constantly changing yourself to fit into someone else's idea of who they want as a partner,
it's not going to work.
Red flag, baby. Red flag.
It's a huge red flag. And I can speak from personal experience. I've definitely been there.
So have I.
It never ends
No.
well. You end up like an empty ass cup. All right. Or like the pot on the stove with no water left.
Yeah.
Since you've been boiling it and it's just getting hot and scorching. Like that's what happens.
Steam.
You literally you burn up.
Yeah.
And also, the other person eventually like ends up feeling hurt because they feel bamboozled because they're like, you're not the person I thought you were. And then that's when you get the label of you broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because that person trusted that who you presented was who you are. And it wasn't fully who you were.
Slow burn to the reality of who you are.
Yup.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. And that's why I was like, I would rather show up in my fullness and who I am and be truthful 100% than to pretend.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend and I'm not going to shift and change because you feel uncomfortable with something that I choose to do in my life or how I choose to live. If my lifestyle and how I live my life does not work for you, then we don't need to actually be together.
Yeah, then we don't work, and that's okay. I mean, that's another thing too, right? Like being able to let go of the things that don't work for us.
Yes.
Whether that's relationships, friendships, work, homes, like, obviously the home part is a privilege, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's when we are trying to force ourselves into these holes, we're just foregoing ourselves. We're just burying who we are. And then all of that is compounded. So we need to just understand and normalize the conversation around letting go of things. It is okay if something or someone is not for you. If it's a sexual act, if it's a partner, if it's a job, like whatever it is, it's going to take more time, especially in this economy. We know that, but that's okay because people make changes, people make changes in their 50s, in their 70s. Like, we ain't dead. Until you're dead, you can make the change.
Yes, you can at any point in time. And like, that's the thing that I love about sexuality is that it's fluid. It can change at any time.
Yeah.
Like things that I swore I wasn't into when I was younger, I'm into now.
Yeah.
And some things that I used to be into, I've dropped off and I'm like, that's not really for me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's such a beautiful experience to be able to like blossom and like enter into these different buckets where I get to explore, where it feels like there's something new that I get to really like play with and deepen my experience with. And that's when it becomes fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think for a lot of people who have like abandonment wounds, or people who grew up not having the things that they truly desire and they were in survival mode heavily, it's difficult to like let go of things.
Yes.
Especially if they haven't had a history of really having much. And that's where like chasing the things that we really can't have like comes into play, because it's like, well, at least if I have even like the chase, right, is exhilarating for some people because they're like, at least there's some motion or some activity. Even if that person is not paying attention to me, the fact that like I can still be in pursuit means that I have something to hold on to, something to actually like fulfill myself. And I'm like, Okay, let's process that, shall we? Like,
Yeah, because it's
we need
also
some
tapping
a
into
little
that
therapy.
familiarity. Like
Mm-hmm.
if that's how you grew up, where you were chasing a parent, where you were chasing the roof
Mm-hmm.
over your head, where you were chasing love, where you were chasing food, whatever that is, that's trauma.
It's
And so we are
trauma.
reactivating that trauma on purpose because that's familiar to us and we haven't had the
Mm-hmm.
tools or the opportunity to actually learn how to work through that stuff.
And to see anything different.
Yeah, and that's nobody's fault. This takes a lot of work and unfortunately a lot of time it takes money too
Yeah.
if you're going to go to therapy, but there are a lot of free therapy services, so like let's not forget about that. There is a way.
Mm-hmm.
It takes more work, but which is exhausting when you're burnt out and you're in
Yep.
stress, but that's a whole other conversation. But when we are chasing after these types of relationships and
Mm-hmm.
we're getting those dopamine hits from the breadcrumbs, from the little bits of whatever it is that we're getting, all of that behavior is just a reactivation of what we have known and how we've grown up and what our comfort levels are.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we can recognize that this is the pattern that we are behaving in and this is what's coming up for us, then we now have the empowerment to see it and say, I want something different. I know
Yes.
that this is where it's coming from. I may not know how to solve it yet, but if you know that you're doing it, that's the
That's the
first
first step.
step. That's the first step. And so you can get through it and we can move past it. But finding that place of secure attachment and
Mm-hmm.
autonomy and authenticity and freedom in that and liberation in that can be really, really difficult for people. But we are here to help.
Yes, we are. And it's a process. It's not an overnight thing. It's not
Yeah.
just going to drop off overnight. And like you said, being aware
Mm-hmm.
that those things are there and that it's happening, and even being aware when like there's trauma bonding present.
Yes.
Like if you don't know what healthy attachment looks like, if you don't know what like healthy communication and partnership looks like, then something that is tapping into that trauma from the past is going to feel like it's the real thing
Mm-hmm.
until you see the signs that it's not.
Yeah.
And so a lot of accountability and a lot of self reflection
Mm-hmm.
is needed, because the thing is, once you become aware, you can't say
You
that you
can't not.
didn't know anymore. You
Yeah.
cannot. So if you continue the pattern after you know, and what's interesting is like people now, since we are in like this therapy age,
Mm-hmm.
people know the terminology,
Yeah.
people are aware of like certain tools.
Mm-hmm.
And so people use the word triggered a lot and they don't really understand the purpose of a trigger.
Yeah.
And so people will say, yeah, they'll pinpoint the trauma, they'll know where it comes from, they'll know when they're triggered, but then they're not doing the work
Yeah.
with that. It's just putting it out there and just saying, like, oh, yeah, these things exist for me.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, so what next? Are you working on that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, and then here comes like the line of excuses, right?
Yeah.
Because we always say, like, you have to feel it to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
And that's
in
hard. It's hard to
it's
feel it.
hard.
It's hard
It's,
to feel it. It's hard to look at ourselves and it's hard
listen,
to take action. Like no one's saying
me,
this shit ain't hard.
I like cannabis helps. Okay.
It
Like,
does. It
I will,
does.
I will smoke a portion, like a small
Yeah,
portion,
yeah.
and just sit in meditation and
Mhm.
face myself. I
Yes.
will sit in my own therapy sessions
Yes.
and keep it real.
The truth comes
The truth
out.
comes out. It
Yes.
like,
I cannot be high and lie. I
yo,
mean,
I
I'm real bad at
can't.
lying. Like I can't do it, but
I
like in my
can't.
head, I mean, like I can never do it out loud because I'm
Mm-hmm.
just real bad at that. And also I have a very bad memory. So never tell me something and expect me to like retell your lie.
Right. Like,
Not good at that.
but
But
it's not
but
easy.
it's
But we can. But
yeah.
with the support and having the
Yes.
tools, and the main thing is the willingness.
Yeah.
Are you willing to experience life differently than what you have been? And
Mhm.
if that's the case, then you gotta be willing
Yeah.
to face the uncomfortable parts, to go into
Mhm.
the shadows, to do the shadow work.
Can't have shadow without light. You can't have light without shadow. These things coexist.
They coexist. And so, like, the journey that I've been on in shadow work, but I kind of
Yeah.
like it. I like it. I actually like it. I mean, I'm a
Oh, wait,
Scorpio.
because
I'm
you're
a
a
Scorpio.
Scorpio.
Yep.
That's
I'm a
why I
Scorpio.
like you.
So like it feels good to be like, all right, I'm going dark. And then just to go in
Yeah.
on myself. And it feels very powerful to know that I can obliterate all the shadowy shit.
Yeah.
Right? I can do that myself. And when I need help, I have resources that I can pull from and people that I can lean on and say, hey, I need your help.
Yeah.
They can offer me different perspective. But this is a lifelong journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's lifelong. And I will say, once you start doing the work, at first it may take some time to
Yeah.
like get through stuff. Like sometimes issues would have me down for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then once I started sharpening my iron on the tools, it was
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, now it's a week. Okay, now it's a few days. Okay, now it's a matter of seconds
Mm-hmm.
that I'm able to like feel something, be triggered, realize what it is, where it's coming from, recognize what I need, and then be able to communicate what it is that I need
Yeah.
or give myself what I need.
And all of
And
that is a
it's
practice.
a
Like we
practice.
need to have so much patience for ourselves. Like
Yep.
we talk about having patience for partners and for other people in our lives, but like,
Mm-hmm.
fuck, man, we have to have so much patience for ourselves because this is, like you said, it's a lifelong process.
Lifelong.
I mean, both of us have been in these types of worlds with like coaching and sexuality and all that stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
you cannot go through a program, any coaching program or anything like that without coaching yourself. Like
Yep.
once you start going down this path of coaching and education or counseling or any modality like that, you are starting to heal yourself and
Yep.
it's unavoidable. Like these programs, there's no way to do this work and not be like, yes, there are
You
definitely
have to
people that
integrate it.
do the work and don't do the work for sure. But like, it'll bring shit up whether you want it to or not. So,
Right.
like,
Oh my
and it's a practice
God.
and it takes a long time and you have to be patient and we're not all perfect and we're going to have different seasons of life where we're real shitty at it. And other seasons we're like fucking killing it,
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have patience to move through those.
I remember when I did my mental health first aid training,
Mm.
I was triggered.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I think I need a therapist right now.
Uh-huh.
Like, it just brought up a lot of stuff that I didn't
Yeah.
even, well, I cannot say I didn't know it was there. It's like, it just brought up things that I had just been pushing back, right?
Yeah.
Because in this capitalistic society where, urgency is created through white supremacy and just like push, it's difficult, especially as a Black woman, to feel like I have time for myself. I have time to like sit and reflect.
Yeah.
So it's always the grind, the push, the go. And I took a moment and I was like, fuck all of that. Let me do what I need to do for myself.
Yes.
And then like in 2024 for me, it's really important for me to honor myself and what I need.
Yeah.
So getting more sleep, taking even more walks and hikes, like enriching myself with experiences that are going to pour back into me because I give so much as a public servant, as a person who is holding down these different programs and working for Exotica and traveling for work and like I'm with clients and intimacy stuff. Like it's a lot.
It's a lot to hold space for somebody else and hear their trauma or just like people don't realize how much it actually takes out of us as human beings, even as an intimacy coordinator.
Yeah.
But like as a counselor, as a coach, as a mentor, anything like that, when you are dealing with somebody else's shit, we love doing it.
Right.
And also it is depleting sometimes. Like it's energizing, but depleting at the same time. Because I definitely do get energized, but like, boy, I need a nap after a client session.
I would just want to say that, like, I don't know how people can take like 10 clients a day.
No, they burn out. You can't.
I cannot do that. That's too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like after one session, I'm like, I need food, I need water, and I need a nap.
Yeah.
And
then you can give to somebody else.
Right. It's a lot. People don't understand. That's why when people do emotional drive-bys on social media and they just like do it in your inbox and they just drop their whole life.
You're like, oof.
I'm like, okay, there's a proper way for you to do this.
Yeah.
Actually set up a session. Otherwise, I'm not entertaining any of that.
Absolutely.
I'm not reading any of that.
Yeah.
Because you're dumping onto me and that's not okay.
Yeah. And also, we're not free labor. This is not free labor.
This is not free labor, you guys. Please understand, just because we're accessible on social media does not mean that our work is free. Now, granted, there's a lot of like pieces of advice that we give online and like things that we help people to become aware of.
Absolutely.
By tapping on the pain points. We do that kind of stuff, right? Online.
That's the free part, though.
That's the free part.
Yeah, that's what we're giving.
But when you want to actually do the work, and especially if you have specific things that are tailored to your individual person that you want me to pay attention to, that is a paid service. It's no different than going to your PCP or your psychiatrist or whomever in your healthcare sphere
Yeah.
you're paying. We're not,
We're
this
the
is not
same.
free.
Yeah, it's not free. It's
And
not free.
so I'm gonna do one of those, like the trend that's happening right now is like, I'm a whatever. Of course.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to do one for this one platform, and I'm a sex coach. Of course, people are in my inbox thinking that this advice is for free.
Yeah.
Like, of course, I'm getting emotional drive-bys. Like, no,
Yeah.
but this is the truth.
But it is the truth. Yeah, it's exactly what happens.
And all your friends think that you're just supposed to like give them everything for free.
And you're like, no.
Like, look, at least give me a tip, okay, sis?
Right?
Hit my Cash App. Like,
buy me dinner.
Yo, that's equivalent exchange for me.
You know, it is. And that's exactly, it's about that exchange and feeling like you are in, and it's not it's a transactional, yes, because we need to get paid for our work.
Right.
But, you know, there needs to be some sort of interaction and some sort of energetic exchange if we're going to be giving the things that we've dedicated time, money, brain power, skills, we've hired other coaches for, we've taken programs, like this is our work. This is what we do. And we're so happy to do it.
Absolutely.
But we all deserve to get paid for what we do.
Yeah. Like, you don't ask a lawyer who's invested all of this money in their education and passing the bar and getting like, you know, postgraduate degrees to just do anything for free. Like, going to a lawyer, you're gonna have to pay something.
Yeah, absolutely.
A retainer of some kind.
Yeah.
So like, please don't insult us. Like, don't insult us.
Don't insult us.
We do, and this is like consistent work.
Yeah.
For us to like continue to deepen our knowledge and our awareness.
Oh yeah, we actually have to be in programs. Like in order to keep up certain certifications, you have to be in, you have to do things every year. So yeah, it's yeah. So speaking of free stuff, normally for my comics, I'll give them a pop quiz and test their knowledge. But for my sexperts, I just offer you, what would you like to offer the people? What would you like to leave people with? What's one thing maybe that you wish more people were aware of or knew about, other than like all the shit that we said, which it can be a repeat of anything that we've said.
I just wish that people completely embrace and understand the fact that they have a choice, that they have complete autonomy over what they want to do with their lives and their bodies. It doesn't matter what any person in power is saying. It doesn't matter like what their culture is saying. Literally, as a human being who's come here, as a spiritual being who's come here for a human experience, you always have free will. You have a choice. And that can be exercised across the spectrum of all things in life. The minute you think that you don't have a choice because of insert whatever ism or whatever, then that's when you're giving your power away. So recognize and realize your power through your God-given right to choose. You have the right to choose. Lean into that. And I promise you, like, life starts to open up.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
If you wake up every day asking yourself, what do I want? That's the same question the creator asks itself every day in choosing to create. What do I want? And that will center your pleasure, and that'll center your choices and your needs first before you try to serve anybody. It doesn't matter if you're a mother, a father, or like a parent, or doesn't matter like if you are responsible for a number of people as a leader, or, you know, a figurehead in a company, business, whatever. Ask yourself what you want first. So then you can pour into yourself and then you can serve others.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, you're not in it. So just remember your power of choice.
Yes.
I cannot emphasize that enough. Power of choice.
Yes. I love that so much. Where can people find you?
You can find me a number of places. You can find me on Instagram at Real Glamazon Tyomi. Make sure you following the right one, because I have people who impersonate me. So at Real Glamazon Tyomi.
It's in the show notes, so you can get the real one there.
And X, formerly known as Twitter, that's at Glamazon Tyomi. And then you can find me in the Cowgirl Workout at thecowgirlworkout.com. So if you are a person with a vulva and you want to build a deeper mind to body connection and you want to improve your intimate movement, come join us in the tribe. And all the fun is inside. And then you can find me at thepleasureacademy.com, where all of my classes live and all of my workshops. And you can find me at the Exotica Expo this year. I will be at all 4 shows. We do Chicago, Miami, Edison, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. You can go to exoticaexpo.com. That's Exotica with 3 X's to learn more about our locations and our show and what it has to offer. And if you forget any of those things, you can easily just put Tyomi Morgan into Google and you can find all of my pages, articles, podcasts, all the things that I've been featured in. You'll be able to find me.
So much stuff.
So much
stuff. And if all else fails, just type in Cowgirl Workout and you'll find that too. Like, that's the easiest thing.
The Cowgirl Workout. You know? I'm just saying, like,
we got to have easy ways because I got a weird name too. And I'm like, birds and bees don't fuck. If you can remember that, you can find me. That's it. Well, speaking of birds and bees don't fuck, if you like this show, please like it, rate it, subscribe to it, send it to a friend, help me do all the things. I'm also wearing a sweatshirt, super out of character for me because I'm usually kind of dressed up on this.
It's so cute though.
Yeah, so you can get merch.
And it's cropped.
It's cropped. You can't see, but it's cropped. I wish it was cropped a little bit shorter, but like, I'm slutty, so I can cut it a little bit more. I cut all my shit. But they also have not cropped sweatshirts. So go to birdsandbeesdon'tfuck.com. I have one workshop. I got a free yes, no, maybe list on there. I've got merch on there. You can get in touch, all of that shit. But thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy that we're friends now. Me and we're like in these communities together. It's like, yay! Oh, I love it so much. That's it, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.